TDT Media, I'm Connor Davis. I'm here with Dom Russo.
Dom Russo, yeah.
Russo, okay, with Zebra Technologies. Dom, can you kind of tell me a little bit about yourself? I kind of want to get a little background on you, and then maybe tell me a little bit about Zebra, what y'all do, and just to let everybody know.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Dominic Russo with Zebra Sports. I've been with Zebra Sports since 2017 now. Grew up, playing sports just like most people. Always wanted to work in sports after that. Worked a little bit at the NFL league office prior to working with Zebra, and jobs here and there when I'm finishing college. So Zebra, we're the official on-field player tracking provider for the NFL, and we're also been doing it for the Senior Bowl since 2018, and for the NFL since 2014.
So how did you kind of inquire that partnership with the Senior Bowl, maybe with the NFL too, and then, branching out to the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, so the NFL one came first. That was before I was with Zebra. But from what I know, the NFL was essentially looking for some sort of tracking solution to implement on game days for its players. There was companies that put in bids for it and showed what we could do. And Zebra ultimately is a great company for asset tracking different solutions in retail, manufacturing, those sorts of different areas. And we essentially was able to use that same technology and use that for players. So that's when Zebra got that in 2014. And with the Senior Bowl, Zebra, since we've been doing it for the NFL, there's an appetite for the NFL and for just people in general of wanting to have this data tracked by these guys that are going to play eventually in the NFL. So it just turned out to be a great partnership with the Senior Bowl and being able to track this event of all these great players that eventually go on to have success in the NFL.
Now, there's a lot of interesting stats you don't really see anywhere else. Like, you couldn't put something on your phone and try to track the amount of yards somebody gets, for example, throughout the day. What goes into kind of tracking those stats? How do you set up on the field to track those certain things?
Right. So it's simply just these tags right here. So this is the size of a tag. It weighs about 3 grams. So every player will have one of these tags underneath each of their shoulder pads. And then we have infrastructure that's set up at all the different venues. So here we have essentially antennas that are around the bowl of the stadium. And these will communicate with the antennas, which will turn out you'll get a XY location. And then you're able to derive from that distance, speed, acceleration, and you're able to ultimately output that. And that's what you see the guys accumulate during the week when they're on the field.
Now, I know the NFL kind of has like an advanced stats type thing. Is this the same technology they use to calculate those advanced stats? Like, for example, when a field goal kicker kicks like a 50-yard field goal and they say, oh, well, it would have been good from 61.
Right.
Is that the same technology they use?
So that one's slightly different. The NFL does use a lot of different technologies for everything they implement in the game. So not quite in that example, but if you're watching something, Sunday Night Football, next-gen stats, saying how many times a guy's gotten pressured, how many yards after contact, how many yards over expectation. You see a lot of that with Saquon Barkley. I think he's number 1 in yards over expectation this year. So using all that, they're using the tracking data to be able to compare to similar situations and ultimately able to come to some of those numbers.
So when you're looking at these chips on your computer, for example, what does that interface look like? Is it like a silhouette on like a pretend field? I'm curious to see like how exactly does it calculate visually?
Right. So the calculations are all done by the back end system, but we're able to visually see dots on the field. So if you've ever seen like some of those, you'll see them from the NFL games from the next gen stat side, the dots moving and you can see the football. That's all derived from our data. But also we have unique views into individual tags themselves. So if there's a player out on the field, I could look up on our interface and see exactly where that is, see that move in real time, and see all the characteristics of that tag. These tags have their assigned individual tag IDs is what we call them. So each tag has a unique identifier. So I'm able to see what that tag is, who it's rostered to, and where it is on the field.
Now, you have these tags for players, but you also have trackers for the footballs, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
So they're not the same. I assume 3 grams would probably be a little, maybe too heavy. How much do the other ones weigh that you put in footballs, and what do they look like?
It's a little lighter. You could take a look at it right here. This is the one that goes inside the football.
Okay, and this is definitely less than 3 grams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be.
Yeah. So it's It's extremely small, and this will get embedded into the bladder when the footballs are made at the factory. So it'll be in the center of the football, and from that, like I said, that's where you can get initial airspeed, initial rotation, how long the ball was in the air. You could drive the height of the ball, so you can get that all from the same chip that's in the football. A little different form factor, but it's the same chip and same technology that's inside the football.
Now, there's a lot of controversy surrounding the media, especially this week with that initial airspeed. I'm glad you brought it up because 75 miles an hour seems like a lot. Now, the combine record is held by Josh Allen and Joe Milton at 62 for the fastest ball. How does that initial airspeed work in calculation? Kind of tell me about it. How does it go from 62 to 13 more at 75?
Yeah, so there's a difference between the two. What's measured at the combine is from the radar gun, but that's not using our technology. Ours is the RFID, and we're getting the initial airspeed as soon as it leaves the quarterback's hands. So essentially, it's two different metrics that you're talking about, and it's one of the things that we try to highlight when we say what the metrics that are being produced. And on the jumbotron, it said initial airspeed, but unfortunately, when people look at things, they try to jump to conclusions sometimes, especially when they don't have all of the background behind it. So I think it's important to know that it's the initial airspeed. It's using our RFID technology versus the radar gun, which is an important designation. And then also, that was the first practice of the day. So actually, if you were to look on our site later, which has all the metrics, Jalen Milrow ended up having a higher initial airspeed on that same day of practice. Seth Hannigan, I believe, did as well. And then historically, Gabriel, I think that was the eighth fastest initial airspeed pass in the Senior Bowl's history, behind guys like Joe Milton. So really nothing new that we were producing. I think just as the data is becoming more popular and people are looking for things, and we've just become more well known with producing these metrics, that it got a little bit more attention than in years past. But so yeah, it's two different metrics ultimately that you're talking about between what's being produced at the combine and then what the metrics that we're showing here.
Now, you mentioned Joe Milton, who has one of the highest initial airspeed in history. Does that usually translate to their ball speed when they throw it at the combine? Can you say, hey, this person has a high initial airspeed, so therefore they will throw a harder ball at the combine?
Yeah, I think I haven't deep dove into that, but yeah, I think that's pretty logical to say that if someone is able to have, if the ball's able to come out hot out of their hand, then more than likely they'll probably be able to throw the ball pretty hard from a radar gun perspective too. But from a direct correlation, I could say there probably is correlation, but hard to say. If that's a one-for-one thing. If a guy is gonna has a high initial airspeed, then they're gonna throw it hard. Speed and the 40 time, I think you could definitely find some correlations there. But then you'll also see some outliers every once in a while where a guy might not run a very fast 40 time, but then has good on-field speed from the mile per hour here, and that could be something as well. Maybe he just didn't train for the 40 well, or 40 is a very isolated event where on-field game speed and practice speed is something they're doing all the time.
Now we talk about chips in the football, so you can calculate exactly where the football starts and ends on a play, correct?
We could do that. Yeah,
pretty much,
more or less. Yeah.
Okay, so that is something that is taken into consideration throughout most of the games. I mean, they have that in the NFL as well.
So they have the footballs. So just to highlight, our technology, the RFID technology, is accurate up to 6 inches. So we're with that. Like I said, you could get where the ball is on the field, and that accuracy is up to 6 inches.
So I'm curious. I just want to know. Now, looking at the NFL, we had an AFC title game this past weekend with the Bills and Chiefs, and there was a certain controversial play. Josh Allen had done a ton of tush pushes up until the end of the game, and they were unsuccessful. And then he had one, and it was also unsuccessful on 4th down, but everybody said, hey, his whole body was across the line.
Right.
What can you say to kind of negate that discrepancy in kind of the referee's discretion to say that wasn't it?
Right. So I think the thing that's important is when these decisions are being made, especially when using technology, you want to be able to make them in real time, and then you want to be able to have 100% accuracy. So that constantly goes back to, well, if you're not able to know for 100% sure that then that it was a first down or this is where the ball's supposed to be, then ultimately, that's something you don't want to rely on. So ultimately, the technology can provide insight of to where the ball is, where the player is, but it's also football. There's just so many more variables in the game. Where the football is being held, when the whistle was blown, when the knee was down. There's so many different variables in football to be able to come to a 100% correct answer based on technology, and then being able to do it in real time. So there's a lot of different factors that make it difficult. So ultimately, it's just trying to find that balance, and then ultimately, using that data to hopefully come to a 100% liability and answer that's correct.
Now you talk about there's probably like a 6-inch difference between where the ball stops at the end of the play, and maybe that we're not there yet in technology. Can you kind of talk about how far Zebra has come in technology to kind of figure out these stats that you have on the board here in Mobile?
Yeah, so I mean, it definitely has advanced in terms of form factor. The size of these tags were not these size when it initially came out, so gotten more advanced in terms of that and making it smaller, more efficient. Adding the chip to the football was a huge thing that took a lot of development of work to making sure that the footballs and throws and kicks and all of that weren't affected. We're just continuing to work with the NFL on any ways that we can make the game better, more efficient. So things like spotting, something that we're constantly want to be in contact with the NFL about things that we could improve on. So there's really lots of different paths that we could go on, and just kind of let the NFL drive that and support them as best as we can.
Now, is there any stat that you would wish that you could be a little bit better in, or maybe a stat that you wish you could calculate that you might not be able to just yet?
That's an interesting one.
Because I know we have like a bunch of different stuff that I've really never seen before until I came over here. Is there something that maybe we could get to in future times that we might just not be there yet?
I think if anything, it would probably be more of kind of really opening up that database of all the things that we do capture, but maybe you might not be aware of, or it might not be publicly available for people to get their hands on. Being able to do comparisons for players on certain routes or quarterbacks on certain throws, and being able to to really dig into the nitty gritty of individual plays. I know the NFL does that, but I think being able to expand on that and have guys like yourself, people that are interested in the data, to deep dive into it, I think would be beneficial for everybody.
Well, Dom, I think that's everything I have for you. Is there anything else that you would want to touch on? Do you want to shout out anything for anybody watching?
No, just that we love supporting the Senior Bowl. It's been a great event. I've been here every year since we've been doing it since 2018. It's been great to see the evolution of the Senior Bowl adopting it, and Jim adopting it, and the players. And I think the Dillon Gabriel thing, I think, just shows that how far the data has come. Before, that was never a thing back in 2018, and I think just seeing the growth of that from then to now is huge, and hopefully we'll continue to be a part of it for the Senior Bowl.
Well, we'll continue to see how far the technology comes. We'll stay at the Senior Bowl, but I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
It's been a pleasure,
Yeah.
and hopefully we can come in contact again and talk a little bit more and see how the technology evolves from there.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you.